Chapter 7 The Seeds of Doubt.
Aerith's sleep had been restless. She would only sleep for a few moments before waking up again. Her mind was full of doubt. She stared at the materia and then at the ring on her finger. Could she very well use this to see what Cloud actually looked like? He vowed to let her see his true form someday. The young princess could not but help think of what Cloud actually looked like. Her mother made it painfully clear that she believed her daughter was being deceived. Aerith found it hard to believe her, yet that nagging voice continued to disturb her. She rolled over and snuggled into Red 13's fur. She missed Cloud even more. This was her pet, not her future husband. Aerith patted his head affectionately. Soon, she was able to drift off, but the sleep was an uneasy sleep. Her nursemaid awoke her in the morning. She helped Aerith get ready, like she usually did when Aerith lived in the palace. Aerith found it odd to have her nursemaid with her, since at Cloud's palace she was usually doing things for herself unless one of the servants was there. When she was dressed, she found the dress she was wearing very heavy on her. She found the luxury in the clothing her future husband provided her. She never realized how much he showered her with such finery, much more fine than her old home. It never occurred to her either that Cloud did it because he was attempting to court her. When her nursemaid left, Aerith reached up and tied a silk pink ribbon in her hair. When the time came, Aerith said her farewells to her mother and father, promising to see them soon. During the final embrace with her mother, Queen Afalna whispered in her daughter's ear to find out what Prince Cloud was hiding. Aerith did not look at her mother afterward, but climbed into the waiting chocobo. Sung was given the task of making sure the princess safely arrived at the destination point. When they rode off, Sung looked back at the princess. The hood of her cloak was over her, and she seemed to be staring at her hands.
Is something troubling you?
The princess did not respond.
Your Highness, I'm sure it's very sad to be leaving again, but His Highness, Prince Cloud, seems very kind and would more than likely allow you to visit again.
It is not what troubles me.
Is there anything I can help you with?
No. This is something I must deal with.
Once outside the castle town, Aerith asked Sung to let her walk the rest of the way. She could already see Cloud standing in the middle of the field, the wind blowing, causing the long grass to sway. Sung helped her down, and she quietly thanked him. She walked across the field, the wind tugging her feet, forcing the hood off her. She lifted her hand to keep her hair from flying in her eyes as she approached the ebony wolf. Cloud never took his eyes off the beautiful princess. Inches from him, the princess stopped. She bowed her head respectfully to him. Cloud moved up to look her into the eyes.
I've missed you.
I missed you as well.
She reached out her hand and touched the side of his snout. Her hand brushed along the side of his face before dropping back to her side. During her gentle brush, Cloud closed his eyes, enjoying her touch. Cloud was about to lower himself to the ground when his eyes darted past Aerith. She saw his eyes shift and turned around. Behind her, she saw Red 13 running toward her. The fur on Cloud's back rose up and he bared his teeth. Aerith could hear his growl and quickly placed a gentle hand on him.
It's just 15. You saw him before.
Red 13 had somehow escaped the confines of the castle. He ran to the princess's side. Cloud snuffed and looked away. Aerith welcomed her pet back, who was obviously missing her.
Princess, we must go.
I'm sorry. He just misses me. 15. Go home now.
The red-furred beast looked to her with its only good eye. Aerith tried to shoo him away, but it simply refused to leave.
Climb on. He will not be able to follow us once I enter the forest.
Can he not just come with us?
Cloud looked at her. Aerith gave a smile.
Aerith, he would just slow us down. The forest is dangerous.
I know, but I do miss him. And he is fast.
After much persuasion, he gave up and allowed the beast to come. Red 13 followed as quickly as his older body allowed. When they entered the palace, they were greeted by the servants. Everyone seemed startled to see Red 13, except Marlene, who instantly found him cute and cuddly.
How was your visit?
Tifa asked, taking Aerith's cloak before she could protest.
It was lovely. If it's alright, I'd love to go to upstairs and rest. I do not sleep well.
We'll call you for dinner then.
Aerith nodded and called her pet.
Red!
Red 13 came to her and she expected to take him to her room, yet Cloud cleared his throat, his back to her.
You cannot stay in your room.
Why not? He is just my pet.
His tail.
Oh.
Aerith looked down at her pet. She completely forgot that at the tip of his tail was a flame, enough to light a small room. Aerith blinked and then nodded. Of course Cloud would not allow Red 13 to stay in the room. It would allow her to see his face easy. Aerith obliged and asked Marlene to watch him while she rested. Marlene easily tempted the creature with delicious treats to gain his favor. The princess retreated to her bedroom alone. She closed the door and lay down on the bed. In the main hall, Tifa was still holding onto the cloak. Cloud turned to her.
Look through your pockets.
My prince.
Do as I say.
Tifa nodded and searched the pockets of the cloak. When she did, she found nothing. Cloud breathed, staring at the ground.
What is it, Your Highness?
I am worried. I agreed to her request, and I regret it terribly.
Your Highness, you made her very happy.
Indeed. But he knows she is here.
Tifa's eyes widened, and Vincent let out a soft gasp.
You don't think he's trying to attack her, do you?
He tried once.
Cloud was looking at Vincent. Vincent clearly remembered the day Aerith nearly jumped over the wall into the waiting arms of the monsters. Had he not been watching her, she would have been killed instantly.
Did you know?
Yes. He was standing outside the walls, taunting me.
Do you think he manipulated Aerith? If you knew he saw her, then why did you allow the princess to leave? Why did you not tell us? I would never have scolded you in such way if you told me.
You think I do not know it?
Cloud growled. He looked at Tifa and Vincent with such pain and anger in his eyes that it caught them off guard. Tifa even took a step back, alarmed.
You did not hear her crying. Feel her sadness. I waited, hoping to find a moment where I could take the princess away from here to her home safely. Yet, I fear he may have found a way to manipulate her.
Cloud let out a painful howl and moved away from the servants, wanting to be alone.
Prince Cloud, you should trust her.
Cloud ignored her, leaving to go someplace in his palace. Tifa looked back at Vincent and frowned. It hurt Cloud too much to think that Aerith could betray him. He loved her too much. He moved along his castle to his own room. A dreary-looking room greeted him. Hardly any furnishings decorated the room, and what did was dark and old. The large window in the room was covered with a shredded curtain, allowing minimal light to enter. The Wolf Prince moved to that window. He peered between the holes in the curtain. He sighed heavily before lowering his head. He was uneasy, and for good reason. Aerith, on the other side of the castle, continued to sleep uneasy. She woke several times, everything weighing heavy on her mind. When she found she could no longer sleep, she left the room and wandered the castle. She spent time with Marlene and Red 13 before going to dinner. Aerith sat quietly as the food was placed before her. She looked across the table. After everything was set, she sat patiently expecting Cloud to come. After several minutes, he did not show up. Aerith called out to Tifa, curiously wondering where the Wolf Prince was.
He is busy. There is a lot on his mind.
Is he upset with me?
Tifa shook her head, smiling.
No, you have done nothing wrong. Prince Cloud has many duties and he is under a lot of stress. Try not to worry.
Aerith looked down at her plate, frowning. Tifa was about to leave her to eat when Aerith called out to her, stopping her from leaving.
I ask you something.
Tifa nodded.
Prince Cloud, he is human, or is he not?
Aerith looked at the raven-haired girl. Tifa opened her mouth but did not speak. Instead, a strange noise came from her throat before she closed her mouth. Aerith arched an eyebrow as Tifa smiled.
I have to go, Your Highness. I have chores that need to be done.
With that, Tifa was gone. Aerith looked back at her plate. Her appetite vanished. She slumped forward, her head in her hands. None of this assured her. The princess retreated to her room alone, distressed. She found herself pacing back and forth until she forced herself to sit on the bed, still her eyebrows knitted together, plaguing her face with a distraught look. Cloud found his princess like this when he entered her room, as he always did. He watched her curiously, his eyes fixated on her as she stared at her hands. She had not noticed him enter. She only did when he called out to her as he approached, sitting on the floor at her side. The emerald-eyed princess looked at her companion and gave him a weak smile that worried the wolf prince.
Princess.
He brushing his head along her arm, her arms linked around the wolf, her fingers lacing between the silk ebony furs. Aerith breathed, lowering her head to rest it on the top of his. She missed the wolf. She missed his warmth and love. She had missed the time with her prince.
I missed you.
I miss you too.
Aerith moved her head slightly so she could peer into those beautiful sapphire eyes. Cloud stared intently back at her before speaking.
You are upset?
No, I was simply lonely without you. I have grown accustomed to you.
Cloud felt his heart thump loudly within him. He wished the time would come when the fire would burn out so he could hold her in his arms again. He wanted so much to be his true form once again, yet a burning question echoed in his mind. It was a question that he needed to ask.
Aerith, while at your home, did you speak with anyone alone?
She thought for a split second. Then she shook her head and smiled.
No, I spoke to no one.
She lied. Aerith's insides twisted with guilt. Yet, if it made him happy, there was no harm, right? When the fire burned out, Cloud did not even waste time. He removed his pelt from his body and took his fiancée in his embrace. He lifted her into his lap as he sat on the bed. His fingers slid over her smooth, soft curves as his lips found hers. Aerith became weak in his embrace. That same electricity, the same passion in the kiss as last time made her vulnerable. Cloud took her hands, kissing both of them before placing them around his neck. His lips found her neck, brushing along the smooth, sensitive skin down to her collarbone. Aerith shifted in Cloud's lap, wanting to be against him, to feel him. Her hand slid up from his neck into his hair, touching his soft locks. Her fingers moved along, touching his face. His face was smooth, sliding down his cheek, finding his jaw, and then slowly moving up to his lips. Cloud kissed her fingertips as they brushed past. His hands found her waist, her hips, her thighs.
He is deceiving you!
Suddenly, and placed her hands firmly on Cloud's chest, pushing him away. Any passion between them instantly dissolved. Cloud released Aerith, allowing her to move onto the bed. She hugged herself and turned away from Cloud. She hugged herself and turned from Cloud, knowing he could very well see her. The Wolf Prince lowered his head in confusion. He felt rejected. His heart dropped as he moved away, lying on the bed.
I'm sorry.
Aerith turned to face him, but could not, obviously, see him.
I should not have pushed you to do something that would make you uncomfortable. I have dishonored you, and I am sorry.
Aerith's hand brushed across the bed until it found his. She slipped her hand into his lap and squeezed gently.
No, it's just sudden. If it's alright, can we sleep?
She lied again, and Cloud gathered her into his arms and held her close to him as they lay beneath the blankets and felt. His warm body was protecting and comforting. With his fiancée next to him, Cloud fell into a deep sleep. Aerith, though, did not. Her mother's words echoed clearly in her voice, and the princess did not know what to do. During the night, she was able to slip from Cloud's embrace. She moved off the bed and found a spot on the floor. The doubt her mother planted in her frightened her. Yet she wanted to believe Cloud would never deceive her. Yet nothing seemed to ease her mind unless she finally saw him, but he would never allow it. Aerith lifted her hands and undid the ribbon securing her braid. Her hair fell down to her lower back. She brought her hands in front of her, holding something tightly within the palm of her hands. The fire materia her mother had given her rested in her palms. She hid it within the folds of the ribbon, finding it a secure place to hide. Taking a deep breath, she rose from the floor and faced the fireplace. The princess held out the materia, but waited a moment. She was fighting the urge, but ultimately won as she summoned the magic within the orb. A stream of fire erupted from the orb and landed on the wood. The fire illuminated the room. Aerith stared at the flames. She sucked in a long breath. She held it as she turned to the bed to look at Cloud. Never in her life did she see someone so handsome. Cloud looked nothing like she imagined he would be. She moved to him, hovering over him. Smooth, pale skin etched with strong, lean muscles. His hair was flaxen spikes. She almost expected his hair to be ebony like his wolf fur. She moved several strands of his hair away from his face. She was in awe. He had the most flawless face. She swallowed hard and reached down to touch his face. As her fingertips gently brushed his face stirred. Sapphire orb stared into emerald. It was as if time stopped, and all Aerith could see in the eyes of the Wolf Prince was complete and utter horror.